So today we'll go take a look at medieval Christian geographical explorations. Then we'll look at the moment when Asia was written in Chinese for the first time. And finally we look at Europe in the 18th century and new interpretations of Asia at that time. So medieval Christian geography. We now enter a quite different language game from where we were last time in Greece. In the medieval period, Europe was a totally Christian place. So everything had to fit with the Bible, with Christian teaching. So the Bible was the main authority at this time. But there were also small and quite small ingredients from classic Greek cosmology inserted into this Christian teaching. And there are three quite different, separate literary genres, types of texts where we can find references to Asia. One is textual, religious references, they are very few. Then we have religious mappae mundi, religious maps of the world. And then we have traveling books from the late medieval period. In the Bible, these geographic concepts hardly appear at all. In the Old Testament, you can find one reference to Libyans. The quotation with 1,200 chariots and 60,000 horsemen and innumerable troops of Libyans, Sukkites and Kashites that came with him from Egypt. This is the only place where it appears in the Old Testament. So Libya, as the African continent, appears there once. And in the New Testament, we find a reference to Asia. Parthians, Medes and Elamites, residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia. So this refers to the Roman prefecture of Asia and not the continent. Europe is never mentioned in the Bible at all. And in Quran, the holy book of Islam, also there none of these concepts have been ever used. So these have almost nothing to do with religion. They are outside of the religious discussion. In writings of learned Christian scholars in the Middle Ages, you very seldom see anything, but sometimes something. Beda Venerabilis, or Bede as he is called in English. In Britain, in one of his writings, used this kind of words when there was a dispute about the current rituals to be performed during Easter. That in Italia, in Gallia, and in Africa, Asia, Egypt, Greece, and the whole world, where there are Christian religion, people use the rites in one specific way. Also, this is not very much, because we have here countries like Greece and Egypt. And then we have Asia and Africa as sort of continents. But there's no difference between countries and continents. So we don't actually know whether Bede knew what he was talking about. These seem to be only grandiose, big names thrown into a dispute in an argument. And that is all. There, one geographic work, or perhaps cosmological rather, was written by San Isidoro de Sevilla, a Spanish monk in the 6th century. The name of the book is Etymologiarum Sive Originum. He's discussing various words, concepts. It's a kind of dictionary. And to better understand the Christian way of depicting the world, let's take a look at the universe used in Christian discussion. Terra est in media mundi regione posita. The earth is in the center of the universe, was the Christian idea at this time. And as a picture, we can draw it like this. Middle Christian cosmology. In the middle we had the earth. It was standing still all the time, not circling around. Around the earth we had a zone composed of water and air. They actually are together. Why it was considered as a specific sphere comes from the Greek understanding of world surrounded by an ocean. Then we have a circle of fire here, somewhere high up in the sky. Then we have moon. Then the circling stars of Mercurius and Venus. Then also sun as a specific big star important for human life. Then Mars, Jupiter and Saturnus. The stars that could be seen in the sky. After that we had something called firmamentum, a sphere that was always stable, in the sense that the stars there did not change their place, but it was a big sphere that went in circles like this. So you could see the movement of the stars in the sky at night. And at the top we had a being called primum mobile, the ultimate mover of everything, who was the god who made the whole thing circle around. And he was also sitting there all around the farthest sphere, looking down on earth from all directions, looking down on every single human being to see whether the person was doing sin or behaving correct. So God was always watching the people. When people died, well, depending on the theory at fashion at the moment, they would go to hell, which was in the middle of the earth, in the most center place of the universe. They would fly here up to the place where the God was also living. And this was the whole universe. It was logical. It corresponded with what you could see in your eyes. And it corresponded also with the mathematical calculations that the Greeks had made. So, Europeans did not believe in a theory of flat earth. This is a later invention. The theory of the flat earth was invented in the 19th century and became widespread conventional wisdom during the 1870s to 1920, within the context of the war between science and religion, representing the 19th and our contempt for the past and our feeling of the superiority of the present. This was the general, and then there's also the American element. Another in the United States was chauvinism that wanted to believe that before the dawn of America broke, the world had been in darkness. Columbus's first voyage for American patriots was rather like a new day of creation in the freshness of Eden. We'll talk about Columbus later because it is a very interesting story. Besides this cosmological map, which was the most important, because it showed where the human beings are and where the God is, looking down at humans, there appeared, especially in the later medieval period, also maps of the Earth. They were drawn like this. They are called TO, Mappa Mundi. Mappa means map, Mundi means the world. And TO comes from the fact that they have the shape of T. T comes here, and O is this. So we have here the continents, Asia, Europe, and Libya. Sometimes called also Africa, depending on the map. Both names were used quite interchangeably. And the world was divided into sections by water. We had the Mare Oceanus, the world ocean here, surrounding everything. Then we had the Mare Mediterraneum. Here, the river Nile and the river Don, which were elevated in wide, wide streams. The center point of Earth was Jerusalem. And in not all of them, but in most Mappae Mundi, Asia was placed at the highest continent. It was the most venerated place. Why? Because also you can find in the Bible many names of Asia. Almost all that happened in the Bible, the events took place in Asia. So it was the most venerated continent and had to be on the top. Paradise, where humankind was supposed to have been created by God, was quite often placed at the highest point in Asia. Somewhere where Japan, Korea, China are nowadays. But sometimes it was also placed here, the farthest point of Libya, in the beginning where the Nile River starts. Anyway, it was somewhere far away. It could not be near Europe, because it belongs to this mythical part of the world. It had to be somewhere far away. What is interesting also is that Europe is placed in a fairly peripheral, subordinate position. Because Europeans at this time, they did not consider themselves as the center of the earth. But Asia was the important place. And they were somewhere at the edge of the world, a very poor place, not even very strong in terms of military power or economy. There are few names here, Sem, Ham, and Japhet. They are names of the son of Noah. Perhaps you know the story of Noah. The person whom the God commanded to collect all pairs of all animals on earth, and some of his relatives also, in an ark. Then the water came and drowned everything. And when the waters started to recede, the ship landed on the top of Mount Ararat, nowadays in Turkey, and the people got out. And then they divided the empty world among themselves. the sons of Noah inherited the earth, and Sem, who was the oldest son, got the best continent, Asia. Ham, who was the second son, got the second best continent, which was Libya, Africa. And Japheth, who was the youngest, got the worst and poorest of the continents, which was Europe. So here we have a strange case where we have a civilization that does not put itself in the center. This goes against the normal rules that civilizations see themselves at the center of the earth. But this is because religion was so important. And Bible was about Asia, and Europe was never mentioned. Even the word that we are using nowadays in English, to orient oneself, comes from these maps. Because these maps were oriented towards Orients, which means the east. Here we have Orients and Occidents, the west, at the lowest point. So orienting oneself comes from these maps, from medieval language. It's difficult to say how important these maps were. You can find tens of them, and these were used in religious education, at least in southern and central Europe, to show on occasions how the world looked like, and especially the idea of Jerusalem at the center of the earth, the most important place on earth, was strongly came out in these. The Crusades, most of them were directed towards conquering Jerusalem, to take the center of the earth away from Muslims and return it to Christian possession. So that kind of influence they had. But then, when we go to see at books where people tell about their travels towards the east, we hardly find a trace of this Mappai Mundi there. When Mongols conquered the largest parts of Eurasia, they opened a way for Europeans to travel to the east. So basically, from the 13th century onwards, you could have people actually going to the east, and seeing with their own eyes things there. They are nice books, and they were also, all of them were written from a specific point of view, whether people actually went there or not. They all write as if they were personal eyewitnesses, because they were very conscious that they are now in a part of the world where no European has been moving, perhaps never, or at least not writing about his travels. And this used to be a quite normal way of writing in the late Middle Ages, because we have also Dante Alighieri's book Divina Commedia, where he tells about his own travels, first down to the hell. He went to Jerusalem, and there's a door in the wall from which you could enter the hell. And then he went all the way up to the heaven, and he's always writing as if he saw all things by himself. For about 1,000 years, Europeans were not interested in the rest of the world. But in the late Middle Ages, they gradually became interested. And so, this way of writing from the point of view of an eyewitness, a person who travels, became the norm for successful travelers. Because Christians were in conflict with Muslims for centuries and centuries and centuries. There was also a great wish to find allies against the Muslims among the Christendom. And after the Mongols conquered the Central Eurasian plains, the Pope decided to send a person to negotiate with the Khan in the east about possible cooperation against the Muslims. An Italian friar, Giovanni da Pian del Carpide, was sent on the trip in 1245, and he spent 2 years going overland to the east and then returning back. The curious things about this book is that he never used these continental references that we know. He never talked about Europe, never crossing to Asia. He never used the concept of Asia. He was, as his geography was planetary, he tells about place names and they are like pearls on a string. He's here, 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 here. He knows that to his left, to the north, there's the great world ocean, although he never saw it, but he knew he was traveling near it. And to his south there was India, and that's all. So he clearly went to his trip without any consulting of old Roman geographic literature. He simply left. But when the next one, about 10 years later, Willem Rubrek, who was not sent by the Pope but by the King of France, went, he had been reading already Latin geographic books. And he knew when he crossed the River Don that now he leaves Europe and enters Asia. So little by little, because of these travels, you had to take the old books, the pagan books, in your hands, and perhaps also Isidore de Sevilla, who was a Christian writer, and start learning about things. Again, a couple of decades later, Marco Polo went to the east, spent there more than a decade, almost 2 decades. There has been lots of controversy about this book, whether it is all true or not. Marco Polo, again, is writing everything that I went there and I saw this and this and this. Because everybody wrote as if they were eyewitnesses. He can of course have used also stories that he heard there, which disturbed people at present, but which was not a problem at that time, because that simply was the way you wrote your books. So he went to China and wrote good descriptions about the place. Well, for instance, he never mentioned drinking tea. Perhaps he simply did not like tea. But he described many other things. And the name of Japan enters first time European knowledge. He called it Chipango. So the name now begins to appear in European literature. He never went to Chipango, never saw it by himself, but he simply wrote that there is an island somewhere in the eastern coast of China. Then we have other books like Jehan de Mandeville, who is a pen name. Somebody, a Frenchman, has written the book, but never went anywhere. Pierre del Carpine's book, Van Rupprecht's book, and Marco Polo's book are quite matter of fact. They describe people. But Jehan de Mandeville used all kinds of strange stories. So he talks about people, but also monsters and animals and beings between humans and animals about the East. So these are all imagined stories. But this was also great commercial success, if we can say so. At least the book acquired a wide reading over many centuries. Then we have a Spanish book called Libro del Conocimiento. We don't know who wrote it, somebody anonymous. You did not always place your name on the book. But it again is an interesting one, discussing world geography. We will go to it a bit later. A couple of maps. So until the 13th century, the Christians were sort of closed into their small corner of the world. We have holy Christian ecclesia, where people were Christians, religious, surrounded by Muslims. And there were also Muslims in other parts of the world. But there were rumors, sometimes also real knowledge, that there were groups of Christians also somewhere in the East. There were Coptian Christians in Africa, and there were Nestorian Christians here and there. And of course there were also Orthodox Christians in the East. But the Western Roman Catholic Church was in conflict with the Orthodox, so they did not count so much. Especially from the Crusades onwards, they became a story of a great and powerful Christian king who was also a priest, called Presti Johann. And lots of Christians wanted to get the help from Presti Johann. The origin of this story perhaps comes from two sources. One of them is that the king of the Coptian Christians in Africa was called Jan. That was a title. And it sounded like Jan, a male name in French. And from this came the Johann. The other thing was that in the East we had also Buddhists. And there was a Mongolian tribe called Chitans, who in the early 13th century had a big fight with Muslims, Turkish Muslims, and were able to beat them. And rumors of this conflict came also to Europe. And because European Christians did not know the existence of Buddhism as a religion, if somebody who is non-Muslim, far away in the East, he must be Christian, was the idea. When Del Carpine went to the East, he met lots of Muslims, not Muslims, Buddhists in the East, and he thought they are Christians. Because Christian ceremonies resemble quite closely enough Buddhist ceremony. And Christians knew what the Muslim ceremonies were like, and Buddhist ceremonies clearly were not Muslim ceremonies. Only Willem Rubruck was able to start arguing that perhaps the Buddhists are not Christians but only a separate religion. But this was only an argument. So Presti Johann figured greatly in Christian imagination. And actually, many Christian states sent embassies, especially to Africa, to the Copts, and tried to find out Presti Johann. And the Portuguese finally, a couple of hundred years later, succeeded. But the Coptian king was not too interested in having war with Muslims and help the European Christians at that time. Another thing is that when one looks at these travelogues, one hardly finds the name Asia there. Willem Rubruck wrote that when he crossed the Don that he went from Europe to Asia, and that's it. What they were more talking about, and for instance also Marco Polo was writing about, they were writing about India. So India as a name replaced that of Asia in practical writing, also not in the Mappaimointi. In one sense this is also understandable because India in the middle of the Eurasian continent is an important cultural place. But the reason why India pushed away the concept of Asia is rather unclear still, because it would appear in literary plans. So it was. We have Middle India, which refers to Africa also in some books. India the Sandy, that refers to Arabia. There's the Sea of India on the other side of Arabia. The India the Low, which refers to what we nowadays call India. You have India the High, which refers to Tibet. And India Superior, which refers to what nowadays is called China. So India started to cover all this area. New maps also started to appear into use by the side of the Mappaimointi. And the best maps of the world at this time were drawn by Muslims, because Muslims were the Mongols in the north, in the Eurasian land area. Muslims in the south possessed vast regions. There was also a Muslim traveler called Ibn Battuta, who could travel from China in the east, while Andalus, present-day Spain, in the west, and always stay within Muslim regions. Al-Idrisi was a Muslim scholar who went to Sicily, and the Sicilians asked him to draw a map of the world for them to learn about the shape of it. This is one of the most beautiful maps ever drawn in world history. You can find it in Wikipedia. It's there in the Wikimedia Commons. It's free to be used. And the map is like this. This is oriented towards south, because from the Muslim point of view, Mecca here is more or less south from the other Muslim regions. And the center of the world is in Mecca. Here we have Africa. So the Arabian Peninsula. Here we have India, all the way to China. And because this was drawn for the Sicilians, meant to be used in Europe, we also can see Europe here. We have here Portugal, Spain, Italy, and with Peninsula. And even some islands here in the north. And the world is round because roundness was part of the Mediterranean understanding of the same all the way. And there's the world ocean circling the whole place. And if we take this shape and geography of the libro del conoscimento that we mentioned earlier, we can get this kind of late medieval understanding of the world in the case of the learned scholars, perhaps. So we have the Mediterranean here, River Nile here. It still was a very important river. Then we have India here, and Prester Johann residing somewhere there in India. Hopefully someday coming to Europe to help the Europeans against Muslims, although he never did. And also Libro del Conoscimento placed the earthly paradise here, at the beginning of the river Nile. Like Prester Johann, paradise also had to be somewhere. It had to be situated somewhere, otherwise there would be no people. Then we have the sandy India here, India the low here, India the high here. Or could be. Then there's a place that also called Trimik. Here we have a paradise, earthly paradise, but Trimik is the same kind of place. Here he writes that in this place people are extremely learned, they live long, healthy lives, and happy lives. And this must be Tibet. So this book must also contain Buddhist learning. Then we had also other places like Gog and Magog, which are mentioned in the Bible. They're places where enemies of Christians are supposed one day to gather a big army and start a big war against the Christians in Israel. So this is the Christian understanding of the world at the late Middle Ages. It is not very much, it's quite curious, and it is the way that people who do not know very much try to depict the world. But that clearly emerged a kind of wish to learn more. So knowledge was started to be imported little by little. And this is the end of this piece. Then we go to a period when this search for knowledge and travels began to increase and increase. And we get new rules for the language game. We still have religion there, at least in the sense so that medieval vocabulary continues to be used, especially in India. But from this point onwards, reading of Latin geographical classics starts. And now, very ancient and old, by this time 1,500 years, 2,000 years old, Greek geography begins to be relevant again. And then there's the element of empirical cartography, where people start to make measurements and draw new maps of the world. Christopher Columbus is the most famous of these explorers because he is supposed to have found America. He actually never did. He never went to look for America, he went to look for India. And until his death, he thought that he had found India. And nothing about America. And what kind of India he meant? He meant India superior, namely China. That was where he was going. He was officially sent to his trips by Ferdinand and Isabella, the Spanish king and queen, and he had a letter with him to the Mongolian Khan, asking for a formal help against Muslims. So it was again a Christian religious reason to go into these troubles. The curious thing is in all his troubles is that, well, he went to the West and found islands there. He thought he is somewhere in Japan, because Japan was supposed to be at the coast of India. He never proceeded then further westwards to China. Also he was supposed to deliver the letter to the Khan. He always starts circling in the islands, and it seems that he, as a religious person, had also a private thing he wanted to find. The image of Columbus nowadays is that he was an intelligent and brave Renaissance hero who knew better than his contemporaries what the world was like, and especially the theory of flat earth supports this story, because he was supposed to have believed that the earth is round, while the Christian Europeans thought that it was flat. They did not do that. The problem that Christians had never attempted before this kind of journey is that they could actually calculate quite well the distance, the size of the earth. If you start on a travel from Europe to China or the sea, that would mean months. And people did not want to send ships and let the people, the men, die out of starvation over the road. What Columbus did is that he calculated the distance in a wrong way. He calculated it's only a short while, a few thousand kilometers. And because he was a religious fanatic, he was able to convince Ferdinand and Isabella that his calculations are correct. And if one reads his letters to the king and queen, you don't find a rational person there. You find a religious fanatic who was absolutely nervous. He could be so passionate that he did not sleep for 2 weeks or hardly ate anything, so hallucinations. So we get a completely medieval person who was not actually any kind of Renaissance hero starting these trips and doing these trips. So this is a way to understand that medieval cosmology it worked, and you could sail also to the west if you believed enough in it. So here are the figures. There's a big difference between then 22,000 kilometers and 4,450 kilometers. It's only 20% of its length. He had been reading books like Marco Polo and the other travelogues, so he had an idea where he was going. The third trip he made in 1498 is perhaps the most interesting one. In his letter from this voyage to the king and queen, he described the shape of the planet. Here it is in Spanish mixed with Italian, but the translation goes like this. The earth is like a very round ball, and one part of it is placed something like a woman's nipple, and this part where this protuberance is found is the highest and nearest to the sky. It is beneath the equinoctial line in this ocean sea at the end of the east. We have something strange here in the east. So his theory was that the earth is not a ball, like said before, but there is something like a woman's breast and a nipple there, because we have the El Paraíso Terrenal, the earthly paradise, somewhere. And Columbus's theory was that it is not in Africa, but it is truly in the east. So here is his map of the world. We have Europe, Europa here, Spain here, the Mediterranean here, Jerusalem where it is supposed to be in one place, and India here, the continent of India. And here we have La Mar Oceana, the world ocean, which you have to cross. And Columbus thought that the paradise is not here, but somewhere on the coast of the continent, somewhere where Japan was supposed to be. And what he always did in his trips is that he went here and started circling around. And he did not go here to China. So I suspect that he was looking for the earthly paradise, because he was not a rationally thinking human being, but a religious fanatic, a completely fanatical person. And in his third trip, he thought he found it. He went to the equator, where the weather is warm, and there he found that the sea water had become sweet. You could drink it. Well, he was actually approaching La Plata River, and that's where the sweet water came from. But anyway, he thought that he almost was near the paradise. So this is where the most famous journey or explorations. You never hear anything about Asia, but India is strongly here under discussion. Let's take another very beautiful map made by Martin Waldseemüller. About half a century after the trips of Columbus. This map is based on the travels of Amerigo Vespucci, another Italian who traveled here. And he is the one who actually found out or decided, interpreted, that it is a different continent. It is not India at all. At the same time, the Portuguese had also been sailing here, around Africa. So you could have the beginnings of fairly accurate cartography also here. It's actually a black and white map, but it has been colored so that you can see more clearly the different elements that it has. Here we have Greek geographer Ptolemaios. And here we have Amerigo Vespucci, representing the two important cartographers and explorers of the Earth. Africa is known to be big and Europe is known to be small. But now this is oriented so that north is at the top. So around this time, the middle of the 15th century, Europeans start take themselves away from the peripheral position and start to place themselves in the middle of the earth and on its top half. The Romans did this about 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. Then Europe went to the periphery. Now it is again returning to the top. And the name of America, of course, comes from the name of Amerigo Vespucci. It is not called Columbia, the continent. It is named after him. First, because he traveled there, published books that Waldseemüller was reading. There's also an argument that Amerigo brought gold and riches from the new continent and partly financed the drawing of his map. This way got his name in the world history. But there are also many stories disputed. But anyway, the European understanding of the world begins to get more and more accurate. Then something else also happens. Gerhardus Mercator, another map maker, in 1569, and also this is in Wikipedia, Wikipedia Commons, draw a new projection. Because the way you draw the sphere into plain paper, you have to think how you do it. You always distort the shape. And what he did is that he changed projection so that northern parts become bigger and southern parts also become bigger. And the central parts are much smaller than normal. The good point with this map is that you can actually take a compass, a direction from one place to another, and get there. This projection helps in explorations. But it distorts the shape, because now Africa and Europe begin to be of the same size. And this is a problem that has been known for decades. But Europeans liked the Mercator cartography. And until the period after the Second World War, maps were normally drawn with a cartograph, a Mercator system. Europe, even if you take it all the way to Urals, which Mercator yet did not do, would be only 1/3 of the size of Africa. Greenland appears in these maps as big as Africa or South America. And South America appears as big as Africa, also it is only half of the size. And Greenland looks bigger than China in these Mercator projection maps. And so on. What is used nowadays, mostly in the world, is a a project made by Arthur Robinson in 1963, an American CIA officer. He drew a map where the southern part are contracted. It is a map where USA appears in correct size. The northern parts are a bit bigger and the central part are a bit smaller. But Mercator, the European cartographer, his influence lasted more or less until the Second World War time. Then let's talk a little bit about the Portuguese. Portuguese also wrote books about their travels. One problem with them is that because Portugal was a small country, many of these books were declared state secrets and they did not circulate the same way as, for instance, Columbus's letters did in Europe. But at least from these books one can find ways of using vocabulary at that time. Duarte Pacheco, in his Esmeraldas et Orbis, written about 1505 to 8, he traveled in the African coast and all the way to the Indian Ocean, and farther. Let's see how they are writing. Now by divine sanction and special grace, Your Highness Manuel I, rules over all the path of your knights extending through the lands of the seas of India and the coasts of Asia as far as the conquests of Alexander. The valiant advance of the Portuguese arms and fleet, which by your command and power perform such mighty deeds, so augments your glorious fame that it sounds through the whole of Europe and Africa, Arabia, Persia, through the lands of Elamites, Babylonians, Chaldeans, Medes, Assyrians, Parthians, Phoenicians, and the peoples of Palestine. It even penetrates to the very distant ferocious peoples of Kithas and the most wealthy kingdoms of India. The Portuguese were proud of themselves, as we can see from here. And of course, in a book that you dedicate to the king, you don't save the praise. You use it freely and liberally. Asia appears as a coast. India, lands and seas of India. India is a bigger place than Asia. It still continues its central place in the vocabulary. Europe and Africa appear as continents. Then we have Arabia, Persia, which are existing places but smaller places at this time. And then we have a list of people, the Elamites, Babylonians, Chaldeans, Medians, Assyrians, Parthians, Phoenicians. People who had disappeared 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. They still appear in Duarte Pacheco's text. So we nowadays think that time goes forward and past is past and future is there, but the sense of time at this time seems curious for us because it was sort of standing still. What was in ancient literature is sort of contemporary, because he had clearly been reading old Greek geography, because these appear there. So 2,000-3,000 years ago and now are sort of the same. And what he thought that he was doing is that he took all the classical writing at face value And he was simply adding new knowledge to that. Esmeralda orbis, emerald, the precious stone. The book is very precious. The situ orbis, orbis is the earth and the situation of the earth. This geography about the whole world. But he also writes that he does not need to write about Europe, because he has not been there, and the classic Greeks has already written about it. And even though they had written about the Scythians who killed each other and took scalps and so on, he did not mind. He simply, there was no need to do anything on that point. A couple of phrases more. Europe, being more excellent than all other parts of the world, produces conquering people. This is almost like from Plinius's natural history. So he had been reading Roman classics. Europe excels Asia and Africa in her larger and better fleets, which are better armed and equipped than those of any other region. And here Europe appears as a continent with Asia, which is a discrepancy what we saw in the previous quotation, but it did not matter so much at that time. Europeans did not have a very sure grasp of geography at this time. And then Europe possesses the most excellent scholars of all world in every science. So the Portuguese were proud of themselves. It's a nice book. I have taken the main arguments and shown them here in this map. This way what the Pacheco traveled along the coast of Africa and on the way to here. Here we have India, not grown very big at this time, but anyway, there it is. He thought that there is actually not very much water in the earth. So this is different from the classic geography. He thought that most of the earth is composed of land, which he called terra firme incognita, unknown, vast earth. And the water is only a small, kind of a small lake in one part of the world. He also started kind of ethnographic description of people. People were divided in two classes, white people and black people. The boundary between white people and black people was Rio de Canagua, which is nowadays called Senegal River. North of it, everybody was white, and south of it, everybody was black. This is important because this is before the European creation of theory of races, which we will also discuss later in the afternoon. So at this time there were only two categories. And the boundary between Asia and Africa was the Nile, and Montes Lunae, moon mountains as he called them. The paradise might have been here, but he never went to look. But he began to suspect that it perhaps is not here, maybe somewhere there, perhaps in the Asia. And Asia is here. It is the eastern part of Africa, and here's the Asian coast. But what you have here is India. But the geography is developing, and this is one specific argument about it. Then let's go to a person who actually went all the way to Malacca. Tome Pires, in his book Suma Oriental, written in 1512 in Malacca, here again starts praising the Portuguese. The Portuguese armadas are the largest in the world, as there are always plenty of, for some to go to Arabia, others to the first India, others to the second and the third. First India was what is nowadays called India. Second India was probably Southeast Asia, and third India was China. And this is the point, early 16th century, when China, with strength, starts to enter European imagination. Marco Polo stories were Marco Polo stories, but the Portuguese stories are even much more exalted than those of Marco Polo. So this is what he heard in Malacca. According to what the nations here in the East say, things in China are made out to be great, riches, pomp and state in both the land and people, and other tales which it would be easier to believe as true about Portugal than of China. So the Portuguese had been praising themselves a lot, but now China appears a possible place which may be more exalted than even Portugal itself. About the people, descriptions of the Chinese. The people of China are white as we are. They are rather like Germans. The women look like Spanish women. So there was no clear distinction, or basically no real distinction at all between Europeans and East Asians at this time. They looked the same. And sort of coming to Malacca was a bit like homely place after the African and Indian places, because here they found people like themselves. About the women, more. Their hair is rolled in a graceful way on the top of their heads, and they put many gold pins in it to hold it, and those who have them put precious stones around, and golden jewelry on the crown of their heads, and in their ears and on their necks. They put a great deal of ceruse on their faces and paint on top of it. They are so made up that Seville has no advantage over them. So they clearly were rich women, the Chinese women at Malacca at that time, whatever they then were doing there. Rich, beautiful people. And one more thing, e beben como mulheres de terra fria. The Chinese woman drink like women from a cold country. So they used also lots of alcohol. We don't know what kind of women they were, but that's the Chinese, the Portuguese first found. Then they found also other people called Lecujos or Lecos. And this is thought to refer to the Ryukyu people, who also were trading quite a lot in the south, which the Chinese called Liuqiu Islands, and perhaps they themselves also saw. The Malays say to the people of Malacca that there is no difference between Portuguese and lickers. It's that the Portuguese bar women, which the lickers do not. So lickers had better morals than the Portuguese had. And their white men were dressed better than the Chinese, more dignified. They also behaved very well. So you start to hear good stories about Eastern people. Then we go to Galeote Pereira, about 1550, Alguas cosas sabidas de China, about some things that we know about China. He was a Portuguese sailor doing some trading and perhaps also some piracy on the Chinese coast. And then their boat crashed. And they were taken into custody by Chinese officials, put to a jail, and then they faced a court. And to their astonishment, they were given a fair hearing. Their point of view was also listened to. And then they were sentenced to some time of hard labor, because they had been doing some bad things, but not too bad things. And then they were released and sent out. And Pereira was completely astonished of all of this. He started to praise the Chinese with very big words. He told about the examination system based on scholarly knowledge, so that the most able people are chosen to state official posts and not family connections decide. And he wrote about the clean table manners of the Chinese, the way they use clean sticks when they eat, not with their hands, and how civil and civilized and courteous they are in conversation. And the judicial system, which greatly surpasses that of Christian countries. He was of the opinion that if strangers from far away had been caught on any Christian coast, found doing some illegal and official business, they would have been hanged. But no, the Chinese judged them, gave them a small sentence, and released them. And this is the beginning of the so-called China legend. China began to resemble a kind of utopia on earth, which was even more developed than Europe, in European imagination. The search for paradise ended. The explorers became satisfied paradise can never be found. Columbus still was doing that, but then later, because you could find it nowhere, you simply had to accept that you can't find it. China took the place of the paradise. It became a utopia, which is a rich, beautiful, mighty country with very good governance, high civilization, and strong productive power, good sciences. So China now becomes a kind of utopia. And later, when Jesuits from Europe went to China, and we will talk about this after the break, they increased this and collected lots of technical information, political, economic information, and sent them to Europe. And a big European learning of Chinese civilization started from this